Hello, welcome. While everything is coming on live, I'm Dr. Paul Dyer. This is Bridges Live, and I am going to talk to you about sickle cell. As you know, this is one of my passion of mine. It's the reason why I joined the Red Cross, so we can help people. So we can help people that look like me, actually. So because a lot of information never gets put out there, and a lot of help just doesn't get help. We need more of your help. I wanted to first introduce a friend of mine. Derek, why don't you introduce yourself? I'm sorry, Dr. Robinson. You introduce yourself, please.
No. Hi, Dr. Paul. No, you're the doc. I'm just Derek. So thank you so much. Yes, hi. My name is Derek Robertson, and I'm the president and co-founder, along with my wife, Shanti, of the Maryland Sickle Cell Disease Association. We have 3 sons, and 2 of them have sickle cell disease.
So give us some of the updates of what sickle cell has been going through. It just seems recently we've been watching these commercials with Oberex, but Oberex has been around for almost about 2 years. I've been watching them develop the science. You want to talk about what's happening in the sickle cell world in Maryland and what isn't happening?
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, so a lot has been happening. So Oxbreiter was approved in November of 2019, and it was along with Adacvio, which is an infusion product, the first 2 drugs produced that really looked at the actual source of what's causing sickle cell disease. There was another drug earlier, Endari, which came out in 2017, and that was also looking at helping sickle cell patients. And all 3 were a great addition to the one drug which we had, which was just hydroxyurea. And hydroxyurea is a great drug. It helps a lot of patients. But it's actually one of these drugs, like many other therapies, that you kind of say, hey, this works for something, it also works for something else. So this hydroxyurea was really for melanoma, skin cancer.
Right.
And turns out it was also beneficial to sickle cell. And it really helps a lot. It has helped my son tremendously. But we still needed and continue to need therapies that really look at the core things that cause the sickling. And so Oxbreiter and Adacvio address those needs. Just speaking, because I'm not a scientist, but I'll give you my layperson thing. Oxbreiter helps raise the hemoglobin level. So,
which is about the oxygen, really.
Yeah, exactly. So it does a lot of stuff, but one of the things it does is raise the hemoglobin level so that, you know, people have more energy and it helps a lot. And
if it does raising the hemoglobin because of the oxidation of the cell and the blood, it has less opportunity to have a sick, the blood doesn't sickle. Is that what's going on?
So what it's doing is creating more oxygen in the blood system. So that's one of the things. Hemoglobin carries oxygen through your system. Mm-hmm. So the more you have to be on what we call somebody without sickle cell, to get to that level, that's what we want. And so that's what it's really doing. And so that's what gives you energy. You know, so a lot of times that's where the anemia part, not all sickle cell patients are anemic, but many are. And so when you have more hemoglobin, that deals with the whole energy. Adacvio, which is another important therapy, is an infusion therapy. And that helps prevent the actual crises from taking place. And so that helps the blood flow a little bit more smoothly. It you know, instead of it clogging up in the joints, it helps with that process of the blood flow in your system. So some very important therapies. And so you asked, a lot is happening. So we have a lot of drugs in the pipeline that people are looking at. Unfortunately, we got some news where one of the drugs that were being in trial, it didn't meet its objective. So that trial stopped. And that's the thing with drug development, right?
Yes, yeah.
For every 10 drugs out there, maybe only 1 will actually make it to FDA approval. So that's why we need so many people working on this, because we know some will not be successful.
And so we're not having so many people work on this. We are not having as many as we would like to.
Right.
Is it right? And I don't want to turn this. This is not just turned into because of the type of people who are more often African Americans, Black Americans who are mostly affected by sickle cell. But you think that's a reason why we're not getting a global movement?
Yeah, so I think historically that has been the case. I think historically folks, we've been overlooked. And so I think, in the system we have of healthcare, people want to generate revenue from yes, drugs, right? But when they really look at it closely, if you even do the conservative estimate of 100,000 persons with sickle cell in America, you have other disease states with 1/5 of the amount where there's a lot more attention. So if they just look at it and say, hey, there's a market, it's not unlike society, right? How many times do we hear people say, hey, the Black dollars are good too. Black people go to movies, right? Black people buy products, but you're overlooked. You're overlooked in the advertising. You're overlooked in how you're targeted. But people are beginning to wise up and say, you know what? We shouldn't overlook. We need to have, they buy cars.
Wait a minute. Blacks aren't overlooked when they're buying purses. Blacks are not overlooked when they're buying jewelry. Blacks are not overlooked when they're buying cars. They're not.
Well, but in some ways they have been, right? So only until recently, I can't remember when I saw a Black person on a car ad, right?
Oh, that's true. That is true.
Or if it wasn't on BET, right?
Right.
So but no, you're seeing that because they're saying, hey, we got to do this. We can actually have a movie with a whole series of Black characters that will make money. So it's the same thing with disease state research.
Yes.
We were being overlooked. We're an underrepresented community. And so finally, I think the National Institutes of Health and others are making concerted efforts to not just do the research, but to get researchers who look like us, right? So the more people who look like us, then they can begin to say, hey, this is just like you mentioned your passion for sickle cell disease and working with the Red Cross. That's no different than a PhD scientist coming out of school and saying, you know what, I want to do some bench research to figure out how these cells work because I had a cousin who had sickle cell. I had a friend I went to school with. I had a sister, I had a brother, so that is happening. And so it's an exciting time. I mean, they're curative therapists that are being looked at. But you also asked in your question, what is not happening? And I think some of what's not happening is that we still need more awareness. We still need more services around sickle cell patients who have socioeconomic challenges. How are they going to get to clinic?
What kind of awareness are we referring to? Besides my loud mouth talking about it, it doesn't seem like enough people are talking about it. And actually, what it doesn't seem like people who are non-Black talking about it. I think that's our issue, too. Because every time we open our mouths, it can come out. It has come out. It has been perceived to come out. We're complaining again.
Right. And I think that that's part of the challenge that we have as a community is to make sure that we're getting the message to individuals who care. And I always say, we have a very compelling experience, of individuals who have suffered in silence, individuals who have been overlooked. Once we start getting that messaging out, then, you have a lot of good people out there who will say, hey, this disease state needs some attention. Let's talk about it. But it's going to take us to do that, right? We have to bring the message forward to groups that are interested about it and making sure that continues to happen. And so I think when you talk about who is doing it, we can be that initial voice. Mm-hmm. But I give a good example. We don't just need to go to HBCUs to talk about sickle cell, right?
Right.
You can go to your predominantly white institutions and talk about sickle cell, right? And they understand and they get it. I think that's something that's that we need to realize. And so if you look at, for example, I always look at HIV as an example. When there was so much stigma in the 80s and stuff, but once people started understanding, hey, this is something we just need to address. I don't really care how you got it or who you are.
We just got to address it.
Let's just address it. And I think if we take that same sort of approach, we can go to all the universities, all the schools. We don't have to just focus on, let's do a blood drive at an HBCU. Yes, that's important because we need blood donors that look like us but we can also take that messaging to predominantly white institutions because they're college kids and they're going to have friends and they're going to want to get involved as well. So, and that's something we're going to be working on.
And you brought up that, I know the Red Cross, I know one of my things I do try to spearhead is having sickle cell blood drives. And the Red Cross, we try to get that out there, try to get people involved. And yet, as we've talked before many times, calling our community out about what they're not doing. They're still not participating. I'm talking about the Black and brown community are not participating in blood drives. And that's infuriating. It's infuriating to know that we need you at this junction of time to save lives, and you're still not participating. It boggles the mind.
Yeah, and I think what we have to do with folks like yourself is take that anger and that frustration and just keep working. We used to do in sickle cell programs, and we'd have two people turn up, one person turn up, and my wife and I would always say, we just can't give up.
We're
going
not
to do it again.
We're not giving up.
And it takes time, and I think that's what I think is, and we are seeing a little bit of improvement. I've seen blood drives, where you normally have 5 people, maybe now you have 10, maybe you have 15, and you just keep working and keep working and keep working because it's just so important. We can't let the frustration get the better of us and just throw our hands up and say, oh man, these guys are just...
that's not going to happen.
We just got to keep fighting.
That's not going to happen. Service to humanity is the purpose of all of human beings should be. You have a thing coming up May 21st. Let's talk about that. It's actually the little board that's behind me, Building Bridges to Better Care. Let's talk about this little thing you got going on that you put together.
So thank you so much, Dr. Paul. So every year we do an annual conference to raise awareness and to talk about issues related to sickle cell disease. And this year, on May 21st, we think we have a very exciting program. We're going to talk about neurocognition, how the brain works in adults. We hear a lot about it in pediatrics, because we know the relationship between stroke and sickle cell, but this is how people are functioning with adults. I mean, that's going to be a very interesting talk. And we have a really dynamic young African-American doctor who's making waves in the sickle cell community nationally and internationally, Dr. Ebony Lance, and she's going to be with us. And then we're going to be talking about gene therapy and just catching up on where we are. And I can tell you, folks who may not be aware, but our speakers are really some of the most internationally known gene therapy providers in the world. I mean, Dr. David Williams out of Boston Children and Dana Farber. We're really grateful that he's speaking with us. He's really world-renowned. Same thing with Dr. Porteous. And even locally, we're going to have Dr. Alexis Leonard, who's a young and up-and-coming doc from Children's National. And so there's a local piece so that she can talk about opportunities for folks in this area, in the DMV, if they want to get involved in that gene therapy trial. And then again, awareness, sickle cell trait, huge issue. We talk about 1 in 10 to 1 in 12 people of African descent having trait. And there's so many questions around that. Is it going to be, people have certain symptoms, can you do certain things? Is it completely just a benign state? And we're not that sure anymore. And so we have, again, the leading doc in the country, Dr. Nayak out of Johns Hopkins, who's doing a lot of research related to sickle cell trait, and she's going to be talking about that as well. And we're also going to be talking about what's in the pipeline. You mentioned therapies, and we're going to be looking at what's coming next. And so we're very excited that it's a virtual program. So, you can stay home and just log on and get the information. And so we're hoping that folks will turn out and really learn something about
where can they get the information to log in to see this?
So the easiest way to go is to go to our website, MarylandSickleCellDisease.org. If you just go to MarylandSickleCellDisease.org, you'll actually see a nice flashing banner that you can click on and get more information. I try to keep it simple that, if you just go to our website everything that you want is there. And whilst you're there, you might see some other important information too.
I love, as you know, I love the brain science. I love the neurocognitive sciences, and I understand, and I'm so curious about what Dr. Ebony is going to be talking about,
right.
Because on this side of what I understand about the brain and the brain science, I do a lot more of an emotional education science and going through pain and trauma. And right. I know the affliction it could have on the chemistry and how it releases through the body when you're suffering. But right. probably when you're thinking about it, how it can affect, because I understand the epidemiology of what trauma does and how the chemistry of what the body does in organs. So just having that trait and you going through that process, just working the science in my head, how it can affect the genes and its outcome. That's amazing.
Absolutely.
That's amazing.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things that we're finding is, as you talk about, executive functioning, right?
Yeah.
Being able to process things and how you handle it. And like so many other things in healthcare, if you don't know what you're dealing with, it's just so much harder. I'll never forget being at a talk, and there was a lady probably in her 50s, and they were talking about stroke and sickle cell disease. And she just broke down and started crying. And she said, I know I'm not stupid.
Right.
I'm not dumb. I've been hearing all my life that I just don't know stuff. She didn't realize that because of her sickle cell, she had certain changes to her brain.
Yes.
That were outside of her control. But she grew up in an era where you were put in a corner to stand on one leg because you couldn't do the stuff, and that revelation was just so moving. And so we're hoping that by getting this information out and just understanding more, and from what you practice, that can just be so revealing and helpful to folks.
I don't think that era's passed. I think I heard how old she was and what we are still going through with our young black boys and girls. I still
Absolutely.
think we're in that era.
Absolutely.
I think we the black community, black America gets so misdiagnosed on
right.
so many levels. It boggles the mind.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, things like GT programs, right?
Yes.
Gifted and all of a sudden you're not in that program, and who gets selected, to those programs, and so it's been done in a different way, maybe a little bit more subtle, maybe not as and so you're absolutely right.
And yet, and I hope people go to this education process, and we're going to continue to have these education process. Is there another one in the pipeline after May 21st? They can see the recording of it? Will it be recorded? Okay.
Yeah, so it's going to be recorded, and there are other recordings which are already on the website as well that look at other issues or issues related to women and sickle cell disease and healthcare that's on there. And we do think this is going to be the beginning of a series. What we're going to do is to see which of these sessions really resonated, and then do a follow-up, maybe a webinar where we'll be able to spend not 15 or 20 minutes with Dr. Ebony, but an hour.
Yeah.
And talk about that as a separate webinar. So that's the whole idea to know. That's one of the things that has come up with this virtual world, right? We can do that.
I'm going to put it out there. If you could get her on to one of my shows, I would love to have her. We can do an hour. That'd be great. Reach out.
Absolutely. I mean, Dr. Ebony is so passionate about sickle cell disease and our community. She would have I would just put you guys in touch and she would do whatever it takes to bring awareness about this, because she works at Kennedy Krieger, so she actually does a lot with pediatrics. But what's unique about what she's doing now is also looking at the adult side, and she's going to be bringing in an adult provider. Kennedy Krieger tends to be pediatric, but she understands that it goes into adulthood as well. And so absolutely she would be, I feel confident speaking for her that she would love to do something like that.
I'm looking forward to it. Thank you so much, my friend. And I know, like you said, we're not giving up. This is not about giving up. And absolutely. I hope as I speak to all you people who are listening, watching, and sharing, and do whatever you do with this video or recording or podcast, here's what I want you to do. If you don't know what to do, please reach out. We need your help. We as a community, not just a Black community, we as humanity, we need us to pull together so we can defeat not just this disease, not just this issue, but all issues. Please stop taking a side of one or the other and think about the human race, because that's what we need at this time.
Thank you so much, Dr. Paul.
Thank you so much. And you have a blessed evening. And thank everyone for listening to Bridges Live. I do want to tackle this. There will be more coming on, and we'll have you back on again, because we got to continue to raise the awareness so we can bring an action into sickle cell and defeating this disease.
Thanks, Dr. Paul.
Much love, my brother. Thank you. Have a good night.
You too.